Here are the headlines for Sunday evening, August 25, 2024. Musk should be nervous. Deep state Lackey admits real target following Telegram founder's arrest. Pavel Durov, the Russian-born billionaire co-founder and chief executive officer of messaging app Telegram, was arrested by French authorities at Bourget Airport in Paris after arriving in his private jet. The arrest has sparked outrage from Russia, with diplomats demanding answers and accusing France of being uncooperative. Durov holds dual citizenship in France and the United Arab Emirates, but Russian lawmakers have labeled him a political prisoner and claim that his detention is an attack on free speech. The French government alleges that Durov facilitated various crimes, including terrorism and narcotics trafficking, through his platform, which provides end-to-end encryption and is widely used among the Russian military. Prominent figures such as Elon Musk and Edward Snowden have voiced support for Durov, criticizing France's actions as a threat to free speech and an attempt to gain access to private communication. These are the fattest states in America. The global adult obesity rate has tripled from 5% in 1990 to 16% in 2022. In the United States, the average obesity rate is 34%, with regional differences attributed to lifestyle, diet, socioeconomic status, access to healthcare, and physical activity levels. According to data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, every state and territory had an obesity rate of over 20% in 2022, with West Virginia recording the highest rate at 41%. The Midwest and South regions had the highest obesity rates, followed by the Northeast and West, while disparities were also found in age and education level, with young adults being half as likely to be obese compared to middle-aged adults. Taylor Swift could derail the global battle against inflation, UBS. Swiss banking giant UBS issued a warning that pop star Taylor Swift's concerts could be a challenge for central banks in their battle against inflation due to sudden spikes in demand, causing price increases in industries such as travel and hospitality. However, this notion highlights the absurdity of the global economy and the limitations of central planners in managing inflationary pressures. Central banks' reliance on monetary policy tools, such as interest rates, is insufficient to control inflation, and their attempts to micromanage the economy can lead to boom and bust cycles, ultimately exacerbating economic crises rather than solving them. How Democrats make Republicans Robert F. Kennedy should be a wake-up call for the party. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has withdrawn from the presidential race and endorsed former President Donald Trump, a move that is seen as a significant blow to the Democratic Party. Kennedy's decision was motivated by his disillusionment with the Democratic Party's shift away from its traditional values of free speech and government transparency. He criticized the party for its attempts to block him from running against President Biden in the primary, and for its support of censorship and blacklisting of those with opposing views. Kennedy's endorsement of Trump is seen as a strategic move that could potentially sway critical votes in swing states, and it highlights the deep divisions within the Democratic Party. Israel launched preemptive strike on Hezbollah in Lebanon to prevent major attack. Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed militia in Lebanon, exchanged heavy fighting with Israel Defense Forces on Sunday, sparking fears of an all-out regional war. The Israeli military launched preemptive strikes against Hezbollah's high-value targets in southern Lebanon after detecting movement that suggested a missile attack was imminent. However, Hezbollah denied this claim and stated that it had successfully launched approximately 320 rockets and drone waves into Israel. The cross-border fighting resulted in at least 3 fatalities in Lebanon and prompted the United Nations to urge both sides to refrain from further escalatory action. Despite initial reports of a potential warship being hit by Hezbollah, the situation appeared to de-escalate within hours, with both sides seeming to stand down and Israel reopening its airports and lifting restrictions on civilians. Democrats scramble to walk back Harris' price control scheme. Democratic lawmakers are downplaying Kamala Harris' plan to combat food inflation as a pipe dream that has no chance of passing Congress after it received harsh criticism from the Washington Post and others who characterized it as populist gimmicks. The plan includes a federal price gouging ban on food in grocery stores, which some have compared to communist price controls. Despite Harris' allies defending the proposal, many Democrats remain skeptical about how she would carry out her plan if elected, with some privately telling critics that it's a messaging tactic to divert blame over inflation from the Biden-Harris administration. University of Tampa RA training includes scenario of student feeling threatened by conservative roommate with MAGA flag. A training session for resident advisors at the University of Tampa featured a hypothetical scenario in which a student felt unsafe due to a roommate's display of a Make America Great Again flag and membership in Young Americans for Freedom. The university's chapter chair, Nicole Gillis, criticized the slide as an example of colleges indoctrinating students by portraying conservatives as evil. Spencer Brown, chief officer of the Young America's Foundation, argued that universities are demonizing conservative students while coddling liberal ones who claim to feel threatened by intellectual diversity. Rare mosquito-borne disease triggers voluntary curfew in Massachusetts towns. 4 towns in central Massachusetts have issued a voluntary curfew notice advising residents to stay indoors at night to avoid contracting the rare but potentially deadly Eastern equine encephalitis EEAE virus. The notice was issued after the first confirmed human case of EE in the state since 2020, when 5 people contracted the virus and 1 died. Symptoms of EE typically appear 5 to 10 days after being bitten by an infected mosquito and include high fever, stiff neck, headache, and fatigue. There are no vaccines or medicines to treat EEE, which is a serious public health concern, with an average of 11 cases reported nationwide each year, mostly in eastern or Gulf Coast states. The social recession is accelerating. The author argues that Japan is experiencing a social recession characterized by declining living standards, social isolation, and lack of opportunities for young people. Despite the country's economic growth, many aspects of society are in decline, such as marriage and birth rates, and there are increasing numbers of people who have given up on their dreams and goals. The author notes that similar problems exist in other countries, including the United States, where rising housing costs, childcare expenses, and healthcare bills have made it difficult for people to achieve financial stability. The author argues that frugality and hard work are no longer enough to guarantee success, and that the gap between wages and living costs has become too wide to bridge. Visualizing how the group of 20 generates electricity. The 20 countries have varying levels of renewable electricity generation, with Brazil leading at 89%, primarily due to its hydroelectric base and rapid expansion of solar and wind energy. Canada follows at 66%, mainly from hydropower, while Germany has the highest proportion of wind and solar in its energy mix. The global average for renewable electricity is 30%, but nearly half of the G20 countries fall below this average. Most 20 economies have already passed their peak power sector emissions, with Brazil's emissions peaking in 2014 at 114 million tons of carbon dioxide and decreasing by 38% to 70 million tons by 2023. Netanyahu vows more surprising blows after preemptive Hezbollah attack, not the end. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated that the recent exchange of fire between Israel and Hezbollah is not the end of the story. Early morning strikes involved over 100 Israeli fighter jets attacking thousands of Hezbollah rocket launchers and drone sites across southern Lebanon, with Netanyahu claiming they hit Hezbollah with surprising blow. The Israel Defense Forces reported that Hezbollah had launched 210 rockets and some 20 drones on northern and central Israel, but claimed their operation was a success with no impacts in IDF bases. Heads, I'm intelligent; tails, I'm foolish. The big bad Japanese yen carry trade is no longer a concern as the yen closed at 144.37, just above its low of 144.18 on August 5th. However, it is far from clear that the pain trade is lower equity prices, with massive inflows into inverse ETCs like SVYX and SVXY. Meanwhile, markets agree that it is too early to price in election results, and despite warnings about the deficit, the 10-year yield is at 3.8%, and spreads are still attractive, prompting debt issuers to sell what they can. Does it matter to the market who wins the White House? The performance of the stock market and economy under both Democratic and Republican presidents in the United States is largely consistent, regardless of the party in office. Since the late 1940s, there has been no clear winner when it comes to stock market growth, with the mean compounded average annual growth rate slightly higher under Democratic presidents, but median performance higher under Republican. Former President Bill Clinton D and former President Donald Trump have seen the largest stock market gains among past presidents on record, at 15.2% and 14.1% respectively. Inflation and unemployment rates have also remained consistent regardless of the presidential party, with the average sum of these two indicators under Democratic presidents at 9.0% and 9.0% and 19.5% for Republicans over the last 70 years. Why state enforcement of fairness is wrong? The concept of the state as an enforcer of fairness is flawed, according to James Bovart's book Freedom in Chains. The idea that the government can impose morality and fairness through regulations is misguided and has led to arbitrary determinations of what is fair. For example, during the New Deal era, President Roosevelt's administration mandated fair prices and wages, which led to absurdities such as a tailor being jailed for charging 35 cents for pressing a suit instead of the mandated 40 cents. This trend towards nationalizing fairness has continued to the present day, with policies such as diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that rely on quotas and numbers to measure fairness, rather than individual liberty and meritocracy.